Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And today we have a guest named Dr. PMH Atwater. And PMH is essentially the international authority on near-death states. This is something that she has been exploring and deeply researching for about 40 years. She's had many near-death experiences herself. And she uses the culmination of her research to establish that the near death phenomenon is not some kind of anomaly, but it's rather part of a larger genre of transformations of consciousness. And this has been a big area of her research over the past 38 years. And so she combines this near death research over the past 38 years along with what she was doing in the 60s and the 70s, where she was experiencing, experimenting with, and researching altered states of consciousness, mysticism, psychic phenomena, and the transformational process to reveal what transformations of consciousness really are, why we have them, and where they lead us. Now, she's written about 15 different books on this subject, and her latest one is called Near Death Experiences, The Rest of the Story, which is essentially like a wrap up of her near death findings, along with her own theories around transformation of consciousness, covering about 43 years of work. So, we're really excited to talk to PMH. The tricky part with this interview was just trying to narrow down what to talk about because she has such a vast, vast amount of information on this topic. So, she is very much considered the head researcher in the world on this area. So we were excited to chat with her, and we're just going to jump right into our conversation with her in just a moment, because as we were getting to know PMH before, we just kind of segued right into the conversations. She covers a lot of information in very different areas, and it's a pretty vast topic. So she really tries to cover as much as she can within the time that we've got with her. One thing that you are going to see that comes up, and it's come up many different times, is around this sort of transformations with consciousness and the necessity to access different states of being than where we currently function. And so this is why, if you have not checked it out yet, we have created a meditation. It's just a free download on the site. It's called Accessing Your Heart's Wisdom. And it says the topic is just, are you having difficulties making decisions? Because the heart of it is that if we can get into this piece of wisdom that we can access, and it's a very different state of consciousness. You are privy to different information than you are when we are kind of more up here in the thinking mind, or if we're a bit more stressed or anything along those lines. So this meditation will not only help you tap into the deeper senses of intuition, but it will start to practice that ability to access different states of consciousness, that if you're wanting to explore more of what is this beyond life and death, this greater reality, you're wanting to sort of tap into different pieces of this meditation will be a very good step that you can practice. And we just walk you right through the whole process. So go and click on that. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can check that out and download it. But I think everybody should be practicing that right at this time. Just do it on before you go to bed. It's a great exercise to do. All right, so we are going to jump right into our interview with PMH, and I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Let us know if you have any questions that you want us to pose the guests in the near future around life, death, and beyond, exploring our greater reality. If there's anything that you feel like we're missing, let us know, and we'll do our best to try and answer some of those questions. All right, hope you guys are enjoying it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
The broad picture is we're having more and more people having really very deep transformations of consciousness, near death experiences, um, that kind of thing where the brain, literally the brain changes, the body changes, the mind changes, our various faculties change. So we're not talking about something that's just in your mind or like a dream. We're talking about something that literally affects the way you act, the way you live, the way you look, the way you're able to go about in the world around you. Because when we're talking about these big experiences, we're not just talking about something that changes your mind. We're talking about something that literally transforms your very essence, your very body, your very blood, your very brain. So we're talking about something that is really large. Now, some people, of course, have an experience that isn't quite that impactful. That's fine. But those who have the biggies, or those who notice that they're not able to talk the same way before, it's like their language has changed. They're not able to act the same way before. Maybe the family makes fun of them, or somehow they don't fit in their job or in their life. We're talking about something that alters the human organism to such a point that you cannot go on the way you were before. We're looking at a type of change that catches your attention, changes your life, and alters the way you live in the world. So that's big. That's really big. My greatest expertise, of course, is with the near-death experience, because we're talking about people who have died or nearly died. So that's a biggie. And come back different. Not just because they died, but because somehow in dying, that changed their body and it changed their brain. So we're talking about something that's very physical, not just esoteric. Now, if we're talking about transformations of consciousness, that it can be very esoteric, but it can also be very physical in the way it tends to tip or alter or change them. And with a near-death experience, and I'm just kind of sort of switching back and forth, but I'm going to stay more with them in that we're talking birth to whatever the person's age is. Yes, yes, babies have full sight and full memory inside the mother's womb. Most of the children that I've worked with, and I'm going to be specific here in 397 people that I've worked with specifically. Certainly more, but where I can give specifics. 397. We're talking about these children. Most could remember their birth. So all of a sudden, one third had womb memory. I had two, two, mind you, who were there when their parents conceived them and watched it happen. One of them drew a picture of it when she was older, took it to her parents. They were so embarrassed they could hardly talk. It was so accurate. It's like, whoa. So we're talking specifics here. And we're talking about something that challenges our ideas of abortion. And what I do, what I've done in my book, The Forever Angels, I have suggested that if a woman becomes pregnant, she doesn't want the baby. For heaven's sake, talk to the baby. They have rights too. With my oldest daughter, this happened. She became pregnant and didn't want the child. So she came to me and says, Mom, what do I do? I said, well, in prayer and meditation, talk to your baby. Find out what the baby wants. She did. It was a little boy. And by the way, he was perfectly comfortable with leaving. No problem. So she sort of waved goodbye and she went on and had her abortion. But if that child wanted to stay, even if it could have been really troublesome or difficult, there's a reason for that child wanting to stay, both for the child and for the mother. and for all other people involved. So uh my advice really is to go, if you call yourself spiritual people, if spirit means anything to you, or if God means anything to you, or prayer or church or meditation or whatever, if that means anything to you, if that has a place in your life, then honor prayer and honor that higher source from which we can all gain insight and aid, and go there and ask for help or, advice or whatever. And when you come out of that, not all of us will be talked to, but we'll come out of that with feelings. And the feeling of, yes, I'm going to keep this child no matter what, or the feeling of it's time to maybe offer this child for adoption, or maybe go ahead with abortion, whatever. But at least you've gone to a higher source and you've honored the human body and the reproductive, our reproductive organs, and this idea of that we are a human family, and there's a meaning and a place for all of us, because a child that leaves goes on somewhere else. So I think that's something we need to look at, and we don't. We
Mhm.
don't look at abortion, and we need to look at abortion. I think we also need to recognize and see that most children, certainly in my research, most babies remembered their birth clearly. So it's all of a sudden, oops, you know, they remember what the temperature was, what the lights were like, how they were handled. And an interesting thing here for me is, as they grow, even if they're just a few months old, they're taking out of body trips. They're flying all over their house. They're keeping track of dad. They're keeping track of mom. They want to know what's happening with the siblings. Um, so as they advance, 1 year old, 2 years old, I mean, these kids are Snoopy kids.
Mhm.
So beware, parents. You don't have a blob sitting on the bed. You have a human being with full faculties. Whether or not they're able to articulate that at the age of 2 or 3, they still have those faculties. And I think that was something for me in working with children, how blatant and clear and loud that was. It's like, okay, well, wait a minute here. We need to be more careful what we say to children, how we handle children. We need to sit down, and explain to children. One of the things we did in my household long ago, long before I ever died, we would have monthly meetings, whole family sit down at a table, and we'd have gripe time, go from kid to kid to parents and whatever. We'd all, whatever is on your mind, whatever is going good, whatever is not going good, whatever they're griping about their parents, or happy about their parents, each would have an opportunity around the table to voice, and there was no recrimination at all, none at all. This was welcome, and they were welcome to be open, and that was a good thing with my children growing up. They always felt like they had parents that they could be open with. They didn't have to hide things or pretend things. And certainly brother and sister would poke, during these meetings. And that was good too. So they were open family meetings. So I invite that for everyone listening. Open family meetings are great. But when we're looking at near-death experiences, I found 4 main kinds. One that seemed like there wasn't much to it. It was a quick out-of-body experience, something that was very quick, either positive or negative. Then we would have the very positive experiences, more godlike, more Jesus-like, more spiritual-like. And most near-death experiences are like that, more heaven-like. We have hellish experiences too. Yes. 1 out of 7 in my research base had a hellish experience, something very uncomfortable or unhappy. And then the 4th one I call the transcendent experience. Very, very seldom do these have a past life review or have anything to do with past lives. Rather, they they seem to be more focused on what they can do now to help society, to help life, to make a difference in the world. So you'll find your past life reviews happen in the heavenly or hellish cases. Not even 50% had a heavenly experience, maybe 47, something like that. They were sprinkled across the different types. With a near-death experience, it doesn't mean the person dies on the operating table. It could be that they came close, or that there was a kind of experience where they almost died, and it so impacted them that it changed their very being. So we have a lot of that too. Today, my research base is nearly 5,000 adults and children. So I'm looking at a broad expanse of people, people of all kinds, all types, all over the world. I never focused on just one hospital, which most near-death experiencer researchers do, because most of them are MDs or scientists. Look, I'm a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station. And so you can call me the gumshoe of near-death. One of these. Dad always said the body says more than the mouth does. Always. So you're watching the body and what they're doing with their bodies, and the hips, the shoulders. But when you're talking to doc, when you're making a diagnosis, I'm sure you're watching the body and how they respond to what you're saying. So that's what I did a lot of. And fabulous way to really get a sense. And as often as I could, I would get into their homes. You want to do that if you're doing this kind of research. You want to know what mom and dad or husband and wife, um, their idea of you now and what happened to you and or didn't happen to you. And it's nice to get as many different views as possible to what is happening to this individual, but then take a take a real look at the main after effects. There'll be a difference in blood pressure. Invariably, it's lower, usually much lower than it was before. So you've got low blood pressure. Very, very sensitive to light. Most people cannot be in bright sunlight at all. There's a few that can, yes. Most cannot. Very sensitive to sound. If this individual is maybe in junior high or high school, and the typical night out or the typical program is that horrible loud sound that most people can't take anyway. Take a look at what they're going through and how it's affecting them. For instance, also, if they're on the team, the sports team, if they're doing their practice during the heat of the day, the brightest sunshine of the day, that could be very difficult for that individual, and they may have problems afterward. And you want to be really careful with medicine, especially with children, but adults too. The average child is medicated according to weight and age. That's it. What has pleased me is that some of these hospitals, with their initial workup, some of these docs will ask, did you ever have a near-death experience? If they have, immediately they will alter or change medication because they know better.
And is that because it's just a heightened sensitivity?
Heightened sensitivity, yes. Not being a doctor, I can't give you any more info. For myself, I go scurrying off to homeopathy, or those kind of pills, or some other way of treating. Once in a while, I'll have a real pharmaceutical, but not very often. Of course, now I'm challenged in that regard. But most of them overall, invariably you will hear of near-death experiencers, maybe pneumonia or whatever. They're rushed to the hospital and they're treated with medication, typical medication at the hospital, and they get far worse. Far worse. And I say to all of them, why didn't you try homeopathy first? Or advise your doctor that you're sensitive to drugs. May we please try something else first? If you do that, then it makes a huge difference.
It's interesting, PMH, because I'm a naturopathic doctor, so it's like we would tend to lean towards homeopathy and herbal remedies, and we even did a whole series on energy, frequency, vibration, magnetics, the next era of healthcare. And it makes me wonder too, when people have an experience like that, a lot of times near-death experiencers get catapulted in a fairly high state of consciousness. And I wonder if on some level, they're more connected to some of the more subtle energetic realms where the physical remedies can just be too too much for them, like
Too intrusive.
the very specific physical medications. I'm wondering if for some people, when they've had those experiences, if it's just not in resonance kind of with where they are at that point in time, and they need something that addresses more, almost more of that subtle energetic perspective that you're
Absolutely.
going to get through things like homeopathy
Yeah,
and bioresonance remedies and these types of things.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes uh, an extreme difference. I won't say a good difference, an extreme difference,
Hmm.
because I hear of so many who go to the hospital without saying anything to anybody, and go through the regular drug routine at the hospital, and invariably they get worse instead of better. And I'm saying, you, you remember, you know, you've read it, you know it. Um, Check first with somebody who practices homeopathy or naturopathy or something like. Go there first,
Hmm.
and see if that might help, or advise your doctor that you will need a child's dose. And again, I'm really hoping that more and more doctors in the ER, in as they're bringing in patients, will ask, "Have you ever had a near-death experience?" Because that makes all the difference in
Hmm.
the world and what you give them.
Yeah. This is a lot of reasons why we're
Mhm.
even having these types of conversations, is to try to normalize it a little bit more, so that that information is out there and that people just start to become more aware of it, and that these things do start to get more integrated, right? I mean, ultimately it's like having a more of an integrative approach where you can kind of work with lots of different groups at the same time, and everybody's kind of respecting different pieces of the puzzle. And then from that, I think ultimately with the idea that it's like the patient is at the heart of wanting to do whatever we can to support them as best as possible, which means put your own sort of concepts of what you think you know absolutely to the side a little bit, and be open to looking at all the other pieces. And I think these types of conversations allow that to come up, where now, even if someone there has had a near death experience and they're not too sure why things are not working the way they used to work for them before, well, this might get some credibility to that and give you another way to now start to address some of those things in it from another perspective.
I think every hospital should have the big book of near-death experiences. It's a big one, but it's easy to read. Has a lot of cartoons in it, but the big book of near-death experience is the only encyclopedia on the planet of the entire near-death experience, and all of its many parts. So the big book of near-death experiences, every doctor should have it, every hospital should have that, everywhere should have that as the base of all different kinds of information, certainly on how to handle a person who might be having a near-death experience. We have all the procedures there for the medical crew. I mean, everything you want to know basically on near-death experiences with children and adults is in that book, that one book. Uh, and even though it has my name as the writer, and underneath it, the International Association of Near Death Studies, please know that I gave all my royalties of that book to the International Association of Near Death Studies. So any monies you pay from that book goes to them, doesn't go to me. And that certainly was a service on my part. But I also felt that this book is the world's book. This book belongs to everybody. So let's get a source out there that anyone can turn to, regardless of your religion, regardless of your mindset. It's all there in a way that's very open. And one of the things that really kind of causes problems in families and everywhere else is this idea of unconditional love. I mean, you come back so loving. I mean, you just love everybody. And you just know that the world is love. People are love. And it has caused so many divorces. Really, really. Our divorce level with near-death experiencers afterward, I have it around 72%, but now it's 80%.
Wow.
So it's massive, causes massive problems in families, specifically with husband and wife or with parents and children. So whenever IANS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, has one of their meetings, and the one this year, the last part of August, first part of September, will be in Washington, D.C. Anytime you want to get a hold of IANS, it's just IANDS.org. That's simple. Get a hold of them. We now today, in our big IANS meetings, have a room or a place where families can come and talk to near-death experiencers, so they can learn about what their loved one went through and how to handle it, how to feel about it. It's just, it makes a huge difference, because when you come back, you just love everybody. You do. Every woman you see is your mother, your sister, your aunt, and your daughter. Every man you see is your husband, your father, your brother, and your son. And it's hard to tell differences, because they're all just so wonderful. And it takes a while to come down off that mountaintop and realize that, wait a minute here, maybe you need to learn a few things about how to express love, and do so in a way that doesn't scare people. And this idea of electrical sensitivity, most of us come back with electrical sensitivity. And let me give you one of my cases. One of the things that happened to me that you might have a laugh at. I live now in Charlottesville, Virginia. I come from Idaho. I'm a Western woman, but I'm living now in Virginia. Very different. Loving, but different. And my first book, Coming Back to Life, I had an opportunity to go to a big sound place where I could basically talk about the book and what it reveals, and they could put that into an audio cassette. So I thought, oh, this is wonderful. So I found this place. I couldn't imagine a place like this in Charlottesville, Virginia. I mean, it was super modern. It's like, whoa. So I got in my little cubicle back there, and I did, and I prayed, and I did what I called letting God out. I mean, I just wanted to be fully, truly there in that space so that I could talk freely and openly. So he started recording, and within about 5 minutes, there was a loud pop, and all the power in the place went down. Well, interestingly enough, in about a block radius, all of their power went down. And the owner of where I was went running out the door and into the street. And he told me about this later on. He met the guy who across the street was a printer. and he just bought new equipment, and he hadn't had it insured yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that fellow heard in his ear a voice that said, unplug all your equipment.
Uh-huh.
5 minutes later, everything went down. He was just ecstatic. He was ecstatic. He said, God spoke to me. God spoke to me. He was ecstatic. And I was thrilled. Thank you, God.
That was so funny. PMH, I have to interject here because Guy Needler, we had spoken with him. We've spoken with him a few times. He's the first speaker within this series. And he has said that when the frequency or your frequency starts to go up, there's going to be lots of unexplainable events taking place with technology. So computers will go out, cell phones will shut down, electrical issues will start to occur in your house and in your vicinity. But it's really interesting that you would mention this as well.
Oh, amen, amen, amen. With most near-death experiencers, they go through this. They turn off lights, all kinds of things happen. And there's also synesthesia. Most near-death experiencers come back with some form of synesthesia. Synesthesia is an elaboration of the limbic system, and you very often have different or altered sensitivities. Let me give you an example. This is first grade for me. No, I did not have a near-death experience, but it's so typical, I talk about it anyway, because I was born with synesthesia. In the first grade, I was the only child in class who could smell color, see music, and hear numbers. And for me, that was normal. I was constantly punished again and again and again, till when the school ended, I decided, I was so angry. I was so angry that I decided that all adults were stupid and I was never going to be an adult when I grew up. And just to show you, how things can occur. But synesthesia is very common, and especially with children. And I certainly pass this on to everyone. There's of course lots of after effects. I have a whole list of them in my work and certainly on my website. My website is www.pmhatwater.com. You just want to get over into charts, just charts. I'm a great believer that you can condense anything and everything to one page.
Mhm.
So get in there and get on the charts and, take a look at what has been condensed. But when we're talking about the near-death experiences, and I think to some extent, transformations of consciousness, those first 3 years are the roughest in the sense that you're still on that rooftop, yelling to the whole world, God is, death isn't. And you're still running around, loving everybody, wondering what to do with all this energy that you have, maybe mixed up with electrical sensitivity and how to handle it. But you're very much connected with what happened to you those first 3 years. The next 4, you're beginning to sort of land. And you're beginning to be better able to work on the job, with people and families, with your own family. Things start to make sense. People feel more comfortable around you, and you feel like you've found planet Earth. And interestingly enough, that 7 year time, it takes a minimum of 7 to 10 years to integrate the experience. Don't let anybody tell you it can be done quicker. I don't care what guru they went to. I don't care what classes they had or what techniques they learned. It still takes a full 7 to 10 years to integrate the experience. We now have that proved in that wonderful, great work that was done by Pim van Lommel in 30 hospitals in Holland. And he found everywhere people are saying the same thing. And that magic number is 7. And I add 210, but 7. And I'm now in Lancet Medical Journal because of that. It is crucial to know it takes a minimum of 7 years to integrate the experience. However, in about the 15th to 20th year, might even be sooner than that, you feel like you've lost the abilities that you had before. Somehow things aren't working out like you thought they would. Maybe the house burned down, maybe you had an automobile accident. It just seems as if you've lost it. And I would remind everybody about the pearls of great price. It takes a while to really integrate what you think you did. It's going to take you really 15 to 20 years before you have really become that fuller, different, more expanded individual that truly seems to understand or does understand what's going on in their life, what's going on in lives around them, and how the earth world really works.
So it definitely sounds like a rebirth then when that takes place.
Well, and I'm thinking too, like, what, from your experience with it, what do you think is ultimately the big reason for why we have these big shifts in consciousness, near-death experiences, or spiritual awakenings, or however we want to describe it? But what from your perspective has been the biggest sort of aha moment for people when they have these types of experiences? What do you think, big picture wise, they're there for?
I've noted that there is a before. Not only are there after effects, there are before effects. And I've got those all listed in the big book. And there are a number of them, and I haven't memorized them all. But things like you were very satisfied with your life, everything was going wonderful, and all of a sudden, whoop, you got turned around. Or your life somehow, some way needed a change. And who's to say need? That seems to come from your soul, that seems to come from your heart, that seems to come from that greater you that says, yeah, a good shakeup would be maybe it would be appropriate now. I can give you in my own life, I was married, had 3 kids, was doing well on my job. I had discovered enlightenment and the kinds of activities that lead to that before then, long before then. Done a lot of yoga, especially getting into the deeper aspects, hatha yoga, and the deeper aspects beyond that. Had gone, discovered Edgar Cayce, Sleeping Prophet. Thought, oh my goodness, who ever heard of such a thing? And I was the kind of person that to read a book would take me about a year, because I'd read a couple of pages and then I'd have to go do it. Or I'd have to look it up in the library, or I'd have to check with some other people. And when I did that, then I'd go back and I'd read a few more pages. So it'd take me a year to read a whole book. But by the end, I had become the book. So I joined an Edgar Cayce group back then in Boise, Idaho. We did a lot of weekend activities with our children, our families, but also by ourselves. We explored hypnotherapy and hypnosis itself, past lives and this kind of thing. We were very, very deeply into this. And a friend of mine had died, and I was in a swimming pool. I don't swim, but I was waiting in a swimming pool, and I was at one edge of it, and I saw her walk toward me on top of the water. She was already dead, but here she is walking toward me. And she told me that I needed to start Inner Form and what Inner Form was. So I did. Inner Form was Idaho's first nonprofit metaphysical corporation. We ran for almost 7 years, and we averaged about maybe 3,000 people a year. I mean, this is big. And I went around to all the major churches, sat down with the ministers, and told them what we were doing and why, so that people could learn the more positive aspects of psychic abilities and realize that these are normal abilities. They aren't anything spooky or different. They were part of our inner being, and we could train them and use them in positive ways. And because I did that, none of the churches objected to Inner Form. We never had any problems in the city with any of the churches or church people. So we flourished. And it was doing really well. And then the day came when things were not going right in my own life because my husband decided to go elsewhere. And I couldn't understand why or what was going on. So he left us, me and the 3 kids. I did not have enough money to handle this. And one night, a man came to meetings that were being held in my home about this kind of thing. And next night he came again and he raped me. I became pregnant because of problems with the pregnancies. That caused my deaths. Death number 1 was January 4, 1977. Death number 2, January 2, the next one, January 4, the third one, March 29. When it was through, I had to relearn how to walk, how to stand, how to tell the difference between left and right, how to hear properly, see properly, and rebuild all of my belief systems. Each time I died, I had a near-death experience, and each was different. And in my third one, I was told by this voice Ah, how do you describe a voice like that? You can't. And that voice, I call it the voice like none other, said that I was to do the research and that I was to write 3 books. The first was not named, the second and third were. The second is Future Memory. If you haven't read that book, you ought to. It is a real labyrinth, mathematically based on a labyrinth. So when you start reading the book, you stay on the path. You never skip read. You can't skip read. Stay on the path. It is a real labyrinth, and it'll take you like a labyrinth does. And the purpose of the book is to raise your consciousness up to the next highest level possible for you at that time. It is a brain changer. It's not a book, it's a labyrinth. The third one was a manual for developing humans. It's also out. And it teaches you easily and effortlessly how to be who you are. You know, years and years ago, the word hue was the sound of God. It was God. Human was God man, God woman. So, therefore, the book teaches you how to be a human. Nobody ever taught us how to, in first grade, second grade, third grade, did you ever take classes in how to be a human?
Mm-hmm.
None of us did. But the book teaches you easily and effortlessly how to be who you are. That's what a near-death experiencer learns. They learn how to be a co-creator with the creator.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. These big, heavy transformations of consciousness, same deal.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to be a co-creator with the creator. That's what it's all about. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Is to learn how to be a co-creator with the creator.
That's beautiful, PMH, and that's definitely a message that's come up several times with different people too. I think that's a big take-home one for people as well, and the idea of how to be who you are. And it sounds so simple, but the reality is a lot of us don't really show up in the world as who we really are. We actually don't. We're so disconnected from who we actually are. We sometimes need a manual or some way to get back on track to actually reconnect with who we are.
Oh,
And
you've
then,
got a manual now. A manual for
and then actually live our life in the world from that place. And it feels like right now, even more than ever, this is such an important time to really show up who we are. I mean, one of the books that I wanted to ask you about that you had read before or that you had written before was called Children of the Fifth World, A Guide to the Coming Changes in Human Consciousness.
yeah,
I'm wondering if you can share a little bit because that was back in 2012, and there's a lot of transition that was happening around that time,
and it
and then
still fits.
and still is, and I think we just hit another really big one. But can you share with us a little bit about what you mean by the fifth world, and yeah, sort of that transition in consciousness that's taking place?
I'm not sure I can because I haven't read it recently. And yeah, I'm elsewhere in my thinking now rather than there. But the idea of worlds, this was developed certainly by Madame Blavatsky and people before her. Yeah, various great spiritual leaders down through time, Edgar Casey as well, have given us the idea of levels of life on the earth plane and how we have lived through these various levels. We can certainly get a good idea of that in astrology when we're looking at the main changes of the wheel. It's like every 25,960 years or something like that, 20 years. We have a full change of the cosmic clock. In other words, everything on planet Earth changes, flips over. And there are other changes, like every 10,000 years, every 5,000 years. We can go on and on and on in looking how the Earth revolves and follows this energy, this push that life itself follows. And we're certainly in a big one right now with the United States of America. We're having our big Pluto return. It happens about once every, 233 years. I forget how often that occurs, but it is occurring right now in the chart of the United States of America. Began in 2020, ends in 2024. Isn't that interesting for presidential terms of office? We could easily lose our republic. We have a republic governed by democratic rules. We could easily lose that. Certainly by 2040 or soon after. And we're starting to see that now. We're turning more and more towards socialism. We're turning more and more toward Marxism. And like it or not, that's exactly where we're headed. So are we going to sort of stick our heels in the ground and say, wait a minute, whoa, I don't like where this is going, and have a chance then to sort of reorder things? Or are we going to do the complete flip? Well, this kind of thing is happening throughout the world and all of the various countries, but it's happening to the Earth itself. Mm-hmm. Because the Earth itself is going through these kind of measured changes, and they are measured in the sense of on time. We knew they were coming. They're here. And certainly we are now in the biggest of the big ones. That is to say, the huge altering of the cosmic clock. Now, since most of us don't remember what it was like 25,920 years ago, we don't remember what the Earth went through. Well, I'll tell you, it went through a lot of big stuff. And the Earth is now doing that. It's on time with its changes. Can we change or alter that? Somewhat. We can make a difference. I'm not sure that we can make as big of a difference as we think we can, but we can certainly make a difference. But one of the things we're missing here in this rush for gas and oil and electricity, how do we handle our cars? How do we handle our homes? Certainly we need to do all that we can, absolutely. But if we turn all to electricity, wait a minute. We are overdue for another solar flare. Get one solar flare, and all of your pretty wonderful electrical cars will stop. And you won't be able to use them again. Around the turn of the century, where one of these, a solar flare occurred. And we didn't have computers then and that kind of thing. But we did have some electrical things by then, and it burned them all up, caused fires all over. But that could occur again. But now we're more dependent on computers. We're more dependent on electrical things. And one solar event, one solar flare can wipe them all out.
PMH, this is also in line with a talk that we heard recently from Greg Braden, who's a scientist, a geologist, and he said that recent scientific data has actually indicated that the Earth's inner core, which has its own rotation as well, has ceased, has halted. And they're not sure then if it's going to move in the same direction or actually reverse. But he said that these are all changes that are taking place within nature that kind of set up alarms as to, when you're speaking of near-death experiences and raising of frequencies and consciousness, or this big shakeup that takes place for that individual that steps beyond the veil and then comes back to tell about it, I feel like on a global scale, as you have probably known of this as well, I'm sure, is that we're experiencing this on a global level now, with each and every single one of us partaking in that big shakeup, where we're starting to reevaluate how we've lived, who our partners are, what our family dynamics are, what trajectory our life has been, what careers we've chosen. Does it feel right, or does it feel foreign to us at this point? But I feel like so many of us have been faced with those sort of questions now, whether it be, you call it the dark night of the soul, but it's definitely a passageway, or some even call it an initiation of sorts that we're being guided through.
Memory returned to me. It's called a Carrington event.
Can you
So
repeat
look it up
that?
on your computer, Carrington event. And you'll learn all about the fires and things that were destroyed when the sun sent its flare to planet Earth, and it will do it again. So this idea that we're going to go totally into computers is false. If we do, we're in trouble. We need to have a backup. There must always be a backup. So yeah, we need to look at that. We're in rhythm. We're totally in rhythm for the changes that are happening. And a lot of us are going through our own personal changes. Yes, that are flipping us around. Yes. But take a look at how they're flipping us. Are they flipping us into just being single people? Or are they flipping us into partnerships that are really more flexible, yet more concrete and more dependable than we've ever had before? It certainly shifted me into a new partnership. Terry and I knew each other how long? 33 days, I think. And we married.
Wow.
We married in 1980. We're still together. Absolutely. Harry is black. I'm white. Actually, he's kind of brown and I'm kind of pebble. I've got freckles all over. And you can't really call me white. But next to him, I kind of look white. He's younger than I am. He was educated in Europe and Japan. His dad was in the Air Force. Loves grand opera. His biggest shock was coming back to the United States. He's a twin. He's an identical twin. When he and his twin came back to the United States, and their beloved grandmother saw a white woman walk across the sidewalk in front of her home, and she grabbed all the bricks she could find and went out the front door and started throwing bricks at that woman. And that was his first introduction to racism.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And it shocked him. What's this? Unconditional love is filled with hatred for anything that's different. Wait a minute. What is unconditional love? I don't think most of us know what it is. Even if we've had a transformational experience. We grow through that. And I don't know that there's an end point. Certainly we've met people that we know are godlike, we know are Christ-like. But I'm still not convinced that that's an end point. Maybe that end point comes when we walk through clear light and we're gone. One thing I know is that my life is filled with so much joy and so much fun that I really don't care where I am or who I'm with. Because everyone is God to me. And I treat them accordingly.
I wanted to ask you, PMH, what are some commonalities between people that step over and have these near-death experiences that they speak of? So whether it be adults or children.
Okay, I'll just read you a list.
Sure.
Well, and is it different between kids and adults?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that they follow the pattern. No, in the sense that they follow that pattern differently. Because a kid can only do so much. It takes the average adult 7 to 10 years to integrate the experience. It takes the average child 20 to 40 years. A child does not integrate. They compensate. That is a huge difference. Because a child wants to fit the family or the mate or the society, or the child wants to fit in. Even when they're an adult, that pattern is still there. They want to fit in. And it takes a child much longer to realize that they're different. And they're never going to fit in the way they would like to fit in. And that being different is positive, not negative. And I cover that in all the books I've ever written on children. Yeah.
As far as their reports when they step over, what have been the reports of what the experience has been for them when they step beyond this physical realm? Like, is there a life review or?
For a child, for the average child, it's not this business of being in another world, like we fathom what another world might be. For a child, they're going back to that stream of consciousness. And every once in a while, that stream will take a dip. That's a life. And then it comes back up to the stream and keeps going. They don't view past lives, most of them, like we do. And you certainly will see that if you read the book, The Forever Angels. For them, it's a stream of consciousness. And they go back to the stream. That's their home, the stream. It's not anybody, it's a stream. And it's a stream of consciousness and joy and love and creativity that forever enables them and allows them and encourages them to be part of this incredible life we live. To be part of this incredible world we live in. To be part of this universe that we are part of. They look at all of that very differently, a child experiencer, than an adult experiencer does. Because for them, life is a stream of consciousness. For us, it's bodies. You know, what was I like in the last life? Maybe I was a soldier in Greece in 1510. They'll look at you kind of funny, like, what? Doesn't make any sense to them. Because they're part of that stream. And it's just incredible. The younger they are, the more fully they know that stream. And that's what they're a part of, is that stream. If you want to look at the common traits of near-death experiencers afterward, so we're looking across the veil here. I'm going to read it. Sorry. Unusually empathic, rich inner lives, some healing ability. Complex, vivid dreams, good recall. Highly perceptive, creative, intuitive, strong feelings, especially those of love. Faculties enhanced, synesthesia, which is conjoined senses, psychic ability. Susceptible to environmental changes, more allergies than before. Oh, yes, indeed, you get them. Sense of being able to merge with others and with nature. Surplus energy for many, with others less. Restless, curious. Strong reactions to positive, negative sensory stimuli. Much in the way of visuals, aesthetic awareness, knowing. Intense focus, love to question, hunger for knowledge. Feel things deeply, can have past life anomalous memories. Identify more with soul than self. Mystical awareness. Comfortable with things future and otherworldly states, beings. Can at times influence physical objects, electrical sensitivity. Out-of-body experiences can sometimes continue. However, hear this, tend toward self-deception. Need to relearn basic cautions. Tend to identify life as a waking dream.
Means self-deception when you said that.
Yeah.
What does that mean when you had said tend to go towards self-deception? What does that mean?
You can kid yourself very easily. With people, places, things that are going on, what you're being taught, what you're learning. It's easy to think someone loves you when they don't. It's easy to misinterpret sexual advances. It's easy to I have been a part of so many near-death experiencers who afterward started or tried to start up a school, various projects, fell on their kazoo, and went bankrupt. Lots of near-death experiencers go bankrupt, get in trouble with businesses, business events, schools, setting up schools. Just because you're a near-death experiencer does not make you perfect. It means you still have to honor the law of, buying and selling, and good common business sense. You know, you still need good common business sense. It's easy to trap yourself.
So it's almost as if they go and catch a and are closer to the spirit. They go into the spiritual realm. They go into the realm of the non-physical, the energetic, and then coming back into this physicality, this, people call it the third frequency, or some people call it the third dimension, where there's so much more density. And as they try to implement that which they know to be true from that level to this level, there is a bit of a
Sorry,
complication.
you still have to balance your checkbook.
Right.
Sorry. You got to do that.
I think that's really important though, because a lot of times I think that does happen when people have even spiritual experiences or awakenings or however they want to describe it. You do kind of get catapulted in, and you see the world through a different lens. But the reality is that the current world that is going on here doesn't necessarily operate in the same way as that does. So you're trying to somehow kind of marry these things together so you don't lose that, and you can operate in the world in a certain way. But I think being well aware of the reality of how the world does operate in this physical form.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. For a while, when the bank allowed us to, over the cut line, we had them put all our expenses are our investment in life. All our expenses are our investment in life. Because that's truly true. And so whenever we would sign a check, we would sign it underneath that saying. The banks won't allow you to do that anymore, but there was a time when they did. So, by the way, I keep a ledger. I do not do banking on a computer. Never, 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 never. That is so easy to be stolen. Absolutely easy to be stolen. Yes, I mean, it's easy to be stolen. So I have an old-fashioned ledger, and I keep our checks and expenditures on that ledger. I can see in a second where all our money is and where it's going. And well, yeah, I used to work in a bank. You can tell. But I think it's good. You have to have a backup.
And be practical. There still have to be practical if you're living in the world.
Yeah, you do.
I
But
did
you know,
want
that's fun. That's fun.
to.
It's not a heavy. It's fun. Being practical is fun. Planting a plant and watching that plant grow. That maybe it's a carrot, and watching it grow. Wow, that's an experience, but it's practical. I'm going to eat that carrot, and it's angel food. And I'm going to learn all about soil and all about plants. That's an angel task. But I'm going to need that carrot, and I need that exercise. One of the first things I tell anyone who's doing a lot of meditating or getting a lot of information on the other side, or they're expanding, I give them a piece of cheese. And I say, remember to open the door and walk outside and eat your cheese. You've got to have something that keeps you tethered to the earth world, because that's where your body is. And as long as you're wearing a body, you got to take care of it. As long as you're wearing a body that you take care of, you have an earth that needs taking care of too. Mm. And you have a lot of other people to share earth with, and they need respect. And that's all part, I think, of the business of living.
PMH, how do atheists, from your experience, return from the experience of beyond the physical?
Well, some of them still declare themselves to be atheists, but I've noticed that many of these become ministers in the Church of Atheism. And they teach in that church very similar things that we learn elsewhere. And they become more loving, they become happier. And I just smile and walk on.
You had spoken before of a child who sees bands of prayers, and I thought that was so beautiful, and I was wondering if you can share that with us.
They'll see prayer as a band that goes from the person who said the prayer to where it's going, and they won't see a rainbow bridge. But it's a band of the rainbow colors, but they'll be banded instead of like a rainbow. It's banding, and invariably that band will be silvery or white at the top and bottom. And I asked one little boy once what it was like to be hit by one of these prayer beams. They call them beams, prayer beams. He says, he says it's warm and it makes you tickly all over. Look, guys, I gotta go. I've got to fly.
We've got to finish up here. So, PMH, where can people go to learn more about the work you're doing and check all your stuff out?
Certainly, www.pmhatwater.com. If you want to subscribe to my free monthly newsletter, which is only for the curious, you simply get on my website and you go into newsletter and sign up. There is an archive, and so you can see what it's like. But indeed so. Get on my newsletter.
Awesome.
We can do another show some other time. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Because my memoir is out there trying to find a publisher. And I've started a new research group or research plan. And I'm now looking for anyone either during their near-death experience or within 1 year afterward were somehow saw or involved with aliens. And I want to know that. So get a hold of me. Absolutely get a hold of me.
I love that you're still going strong, PMH.
Yeah. PMH, thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you.
We'll talk soon. Bye.